Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Before we start today's lesson, I want to kindly remind you to click the like button and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps this channel grow, and it also makes sure you don't miss out on future lessons. Every time you like and subscribe, you're not only supporting me, but you're also supporting yourself, because it's a small action that keeps English learning close to you every day. Now, today's topic is one of the most important challenges for English learners: how to stop translating in your head and start thinking directly in English. If you're like me, maybe you've had this experience. You want to say something, but first you think in your own language, then you translate word by word, and by the time you finally speak, the moment has already passed. It feels slow, it feels stressful, and sometimes it even makes you afraid to join conversations. I know exactly how that feels, because I used to be in the same situation. But here's the good news: you don't have to stay stuck in that cycle. You can train your brain to think naturally in English, step by step, just like you trained yourself in your native language when you were a child. In this series, I'll share my own journey of how I moved from translation to direct thinking. I'll talk about the exercises I used every day, the mistakes I made, and the breakthroughs I experienced. And the best part? You don't need to be perfect in English to begin. You can start today, even with a small vocabulary. So stay with me until the end, because we'll explore real methods you can use to build your confidence, improve your fluency, and finally enjoy speaking English without the heavy burden of translation. And once again, don't forget to click like and subscribe right now, because your English journey deserves support. And together, we can make this process easier, more enjoyable, and more effective. Chapter 1: My struggle with translating in my head. When I first started learning English, I thought I was making good progress. I learned many new words, I studied grammar rules, and I could understand some short conversations. But when I tried to speak, something strange happened. My brain wanted to say everything in my native language first. Then, after thinking in my own language, I tried to translate my words into English. This process was slow, stressful, and sometimes very confusing. Let me give you an example. One day, I wanted to say something simple: I am hungry. In my head, I thought in my native language first. Then I tried to translate each word, but I was not sure about the grammar. Should I say, I hungry, or I am hungry? I remembered the rule about be verbs, but it took me time to think. In the end, I said the correct sentence, but it felt like a big fight inside my brain. This happened to me almost every time I wanted to speak. If someone asked me a question, I paused. I thought about the answer in my own language. I tried to translate, and by the time I was ready, the conversation had already moved on. I felt frustrated. I felt like I could not speak fast enough. At that moment, I realized something important. If I wanted to speak English naturally, I could not keep translating in my head. I had to train my brain to think directly in English. Why translating slows us down? I started to ask myself, why does translating make speaking so hard? I discovered a few reasons. First, translating takes too much time. When we hear a question in English, our brain tries to translate it into our own language. Then we think of the answer in our language. Finally, we try to translate it back into English. That is 3 steps. No wonder conversations feel slow. Second, translations are often not exact. Languages are different. The way we say things in my native language is not always the same in English. For example, in my language, we might say something like, my stomach is empty, instead of, I am hungry. If I try to translate word by word, it sounds strange or even wrong in English. Third, translating makes me nervous. When I am trying to translate, I focus too much on grammar rules and word choices. I worry about making mistakes. I forget about the main purpose of speaking, to communicate. My first small steps. At first, I did not know how to change this habit. My brain was so used to thinking in my native language, but I decided to start small. One simple step I took was labeling objects around me with their English names. For example, I put a small paper on my desk with the word desk. I put another one on my chair with the word chair. Every time I looked at those objects, I forced myself to think the English word first. This helped me connect objects directly with English instead of translating from my language. Another step I tried was to ask myself small questions in English during the day. For example, when I woke up, I asked myself, "What time is it? How do I feel today?" If I wanted to drink tea, I told myself, "I want some tea." These were very short sentences, but they helped me start thinking in English. At the beginning, it felt strange. My brain wanted to go back to my native language, but with practice, I started to get used to these small English thoughts. The day I noticed a change. One morning, something amazing happened. I woke up, and before I even realized it, I thought to myself, "I don't want to get out of bed." The sentence came directly in English without translation. It felt natural and automatic. I was so happy that day. I told myself, yes, my brain can think in English. It gave me hope and motivation to continue. I understood that training the brain is possible, but it needs patience and daily practice. Common challenges I faced. Of course, this journey was not easy. I faced many problems, limited vocabulary. Sometimes I wanted to think in English, but I did not know the right word. This made me feel stuck. To solve this, I started learning words that I really use in my daily life, not just random difficult words from textbooks. Grammar worries. I worried about using the correct tense or structure, but I learned that in daily thinking, grammar does not need to be perfect. The important thing is to practice thinking in English, even with simple sentences. Forgetting to practice. At times, I forgot to use English thoughts during my day. My brain naturally went back to my native language. To fix this, I set small reminders, like writing "Think in English" on a sticky note near my computer. Building confidence, step by step. Slowly, I started to build confidence. The more I practiced, the easier it became. I started to notice that some sentences came quickly without translation. For example, "I need water." "Where is my phone?" "I am tired." These are very basic sentences, but they were important milestones for me. They showed that my brain was beginning to work directly in English. Later, I challenged myself with longer thoughts. For example, "I need to go to the supermarket today because I don't have any milk." "I think this movie is interesting, but the ending is too sad." I did not always get the sentences perfect. Sometimes I used the wrong tense or forgot a small word, but I kept telling myself, it's okay. The important thing is that I am thinking in English. My feelings about the journey. Looking back, I can see that this journey was not just about language. It was also about patience, discipline, and confidence. At first, I felt nervous and slow, but little by little, I started to enjoy the process. I felt proud every time I had a natural English thought. I also noticed that thinking in English made listening easier. When I listened to English conversations, I did not need to translate everything into my language. I could understand the meaning more directly. This made me feel more connected to the language. My big realization. The biggest lesson I learned in this chapter of my journey is simple. To think in English, you must practice every day, even in small ways. It will not happen overnight, but if you practice consistently, your brain will slowly change. Now, I know that translating in my head is not the only way. I can train my brain to think directly in English. And once I started this process, speaking became much faster, easier, and more enjoyable. Chapter 2. My daily methods to train my brain. When I understood that translating in my head was slowing me down, I knew I needed a system. I needed to create habits that would help my brain think directly in English. In this chapter, I want to share the methods I used every day. These methods are simple, but they really change the way I think and speak. Morning routine. Starting my day in English. I discovered that the best time to practice thinking in English is in the morning. When I wake up, my brain is fresh. If I use English at this moment, it sets the tone for the whole day. So I created a small morning routine. As soon as I opened my eyes, I tried to say one sentence in English. For example, "I don't want to wake up yet." "I slept well." "Today will be a good day." These were not difficult sentences, but they gave me an important signal. Now it's time to think in English. While brushing my teeth, I talked to myself in English. For example, "My toothpaste is almost finished. I need to buy a new one." "The water is too cold." By making this a habit, I started every day with English thoughts. Using English labels in my room. Another method I used was putting English labels on objects in my room. I wrote words like mirror, door, window, lamp, and pillow. Every time I looked at these objects, I repeated the English word in my head. At first, it felt childish, but it worked. My brain started to connect objects directly to English words. I did not have to translate from my native language anymore. For example, when I saw my chair, I immediately thought chair, not the word in my own language. This method was simple, but very powerful. Talking to myself during the day. One of the most useful habits I created was self-talk. I began to describe my actions in English as I did them. For example, while cooking, I am cutting the vegetables. I need some oil. The rice is almost ready. While walking, the weather is hot today. I see many people on the street. While shopping, I need to buy eggs. They are cheaper today than yesterday. At the beginning, I spoke these sentences quietly or just in my mind. Later, I started whispering them. This practice made my brain very active in English. It was like creating my own English environment. Using a thinking journal. Another exercise I loved was writing a thinking journal. Every evening, I wrote a few sentences about my day, but in very simple English. For example, today I went to work at 9. I was very busy, but I felt happy because I finished everything. I cooked dinner at home. I made rice and fish. It was delicious. This journal was not about perfect grammar. It was about training my brain to remember my day in English, not in my native language. After some weeks, I noticed that when I thought about my day, English sentences came more naturally. The 1-minute English challenge. I also created a special challenge for myself. Every day, I gave myself one topic and spoke in English for 1 minute without stopping. For example, my topics were my favorite food, my last weekend, a movie I watched, what I will do tomorrow. In the beginning, it was very hard. I stopped many times because I did not know what to say. But I told myself, don't translate. Just keep speaking, even if it is simple. Sometimes I said things like, I like pizza. Pizza is delicious. I usually eat pizza with my friends. My favorite pizza is cheese. When I eat pizza, I feel happy. It was very basic, but it trained my brain to think quickly in English. After weeks, my 1-minute talks became 2 minutes, then 3. Listening without subtitles. Listening practice was also very important. Before, I always used subtitles in my native language, but that made me translate in my head again. So I decided to change. At first, I listened to very simple English videos without subtitles. I chose topics I liked, such as cooking, travel, or short stories. Even if I did not understand every word, I focused on the main idea. Later, I used English subtitles instead of my language. This helped me connect the sounds with the words. Slowly, I started to understand more directly in English, without translation, using questions to train my mind. I discovered a useful trick, asking myself questions in English. For example, I asked, what time is it? What do I want to eat for lunch? What will I do after work? When I asked the question in English, my brain naturally wanted to answer in English too. It became a small game that trained my thinking. Dealing with missing words. Of course, sometimes I didn't know a word in English. At first, this made me stop and go back to my native language. But I realized that this was dangerous because it would make me translate again. So I created a rule. If I don't know a word, I will explain it with other simple words. For example, instead of fridge, I said the cold box for food. Instead of umbrella, I said the thing I use when it rains. This rule helped me stay in English even when my vocabulary was small. It made me more creative and more confident. My evening reflection in English. At the end of each day, I spent 5 minutes thinking in English about what happened. I asked myself, what did I do today? What made me happy? What will I do tomorrow? I didn't write everything down, but I thought about it in English. This simple reflection closed my day with English thoughts and prepared my brain for the next day. My results. After a few months of using these methods, I started to see big changes. I could answer questions faster without translating. I felt more confident speaking with friends. I started to dream in English sometimes, which was amazing for me. Most importantly, I felt free. I was not trapped by translation anymore. It was not perfect, of course. I still made mistakes, but my brain was slowly becoming more comfortable with English. My advice to other learners: if you want to stop translating in your head, my advice is simple. 1, start small. Use short sentences. 2. Make it a daily habit. Even 5 minutes is better than nothing. 3. Don't worry about mistakes. Focus on thinking directly in English. 4. Use your real life as material. Talk about what you see, what you do, and what you feel. Remember, this is not about learning more grammar or vocabulary. It is about training your brain. And training takes time, but it works. Closing thoughts for this chapter. When I look back, I realize that these daily methods were like small exercises for my brain. Just like going to the gym makes your body stronger, practicing these habits made my English brain stronger. At first, it was difficult, but little by little, my brain stopped translating and started thinking directly in English. That was the moment when I truly began to feel comfortable with the language. And now, I want to share something even more powerful in the next chapter: how I learned to stay in English during conversations with other people. Chapter 3: Staying in English during real conversations. In the first chapters, I explained how I began training my brain to stop translating in my head. I shared my daily routines and personal exercises. But the real challenge came when I had to speak with other people. Thinking in English alone was one thing, but using English in real conversations was a different level. At first, I was nervous. My brain wanted to go back to my native language, especially when I didn't know a word. But I slowly discovered methods to stay in English. In this chapter, I want to share exactly how I practiced, the mistakes I made, and the strategies that helped me. My first struggles in conversation. I still remember one of my first conversations with a foreigner. It was very short, but it felt very difficult. He asked me, "How's your day going?" In my head, I immediately translated his question into my language. Then I thought of the answer in my language. Finally, I tried to translate back into English. This whole process took too long. By the time I opened my mouth, I just said, "Good, thank you." I felt disappointed. I wanted to say more, but my brain was too busy translating. That day, I realized if I wanted to improve, I had to learn directly in English during conversations. Method 1: Preparing simple answers. One thing that helped me was preparing simple answers for common questions. For example, when people asked, "How are you? What do you do? Where are you from?" Instead of waiting and translating in my head, I practiced some short answers in English. For example, "I'm good, thank you. How about you?" "I work in an office. I help with documents and calls. I'm from a small city in the north of Guangdong." These were not long or complicated, but they gave me confidence. I realized that I didn't need perfect English. I just needed to be ready with simple, clear sentences. Method 2: Slowing down my speaking. In the beginning, I felt pressure to speak fast, like a native, but this only made me panic and translate. Then I gave myself permission to speak slowly. For example, instead of rushing, I said, let me think. I went to the park yesterday. It was relaxing." Speaking slowly gave me time to think in English. It also made my sentences clearer. I noticed that people were patient and happy to listen, even if I spoke slowly. Method 3: Asking for time. Another strategy I learned was asking for time politely. When someone asked me a question and I needed a moment to think, I said, "That's a good question. Let me think for a second." "I'm not sure. Give me a moment." These small phrases gave my brain time to prepare English sentences without going back to my native language. It also made the conversation feel more natural. Method 4: Staying in English, even with mistakes. In conversations, I often made mistakes. For example, I sometimes said, "He go to work yesterday." I knew it was wrong, but I forced myself to keep speaking in English. If I stopped to translate and correct everything, the conversation would break. I told myself, it's better to speak with mistakes in English than to translate in silence. To my surprise, most people understood me even with mistakes. They cared more about communication than about grammar. This gave me confidence to keep going. Method 5: Using paraphrasing. Sometimes I didn't know a word in English. For example, once I wanted to say elevator, but I forgot the word. Instead of translating from my language, I explained, "The machine that takes people up and down in a building." The listener immediately understood and said, "Oh, the elevator?" I smiled and said, "Yes, the elevator." This technique is called paraphrasing. It became one of my favorite tools because it kept me in English, even with a small vocabulary. CATA Method 6, using questions to keep the conversation alive. I realized that when I asked questions, I felt less pressure to speak long sentences. For example, instead of only answering, "What do you like to eat?" with "I like noodles," I added, "What about you?" This simple question gave me a break and made the conversation more balanced. It also helped me practice listening in English. Building confidence in real situations. The more I practiced, the easier it became. I remember one day at a cafe, I had a short conversation with a tourist. It went like this: "Tourist, is this seat taken?" Me, "No, it's free. You can sit here. Thanks. Do you live here?" "Yes, I live nearby. It's a nice city. How about you?" "I'm visiting from Australia." "Wow, that's far. Do you like China?" It was not a long talk, but I felt proud. I stayed in English the whole time. I didn't translate in my head. That was progress. My small rules for staying in English. After many conversations, I created 3 personal rules. 1, don't panic if I don't know a word. I use simple words or paraphrasing. 2, don't try to be perfect. Mistakes are part of learning. 3, keep the flow. Even short answers are better than silence. These rules help me focus on communication, not translation. My breakthrough moment. One of the happiest moments in my journey was when I had a 15-minute conversation with a foreign teacher. During that talk, I suddenly realized I wasn't translating anymore. The words came directly in English. I didn't even think about my native language. After the conversation, I felt emotional. I understood that my daily training had finally changed my brain. I was beginning to think and speak directly in English, even with other people. Encouragement for other learners. If you are also trying to stop translating, remember this: speaking with people is scary at first, but it is the best training. You don't need big words. You don't need perfect grammar. You just need courage to stay in English. Start small. Prepare answers for common questions. Speak slowly. Ask for time when needed. Use paraphrasing. And most importantly, don't give up. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. Closing thoughts for this chapter. Looking back, I see that staying in English during real conversations was the hardest step, but also the most rewarding. It forced me to use everything I had learned. It made me stronger and more confident. The truth is, fluency is not about never making mistakes. It is about learning to stay in English, even when it is difficult. Now, when I meet new people and speak in English, I feel free. My brain is not busy translating anymore. Instead, I enjoy the conversation. And that, for me, is the real success. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. I hope you found these ideas and tips useful, and I also hope they gave you the confidence to start practicing thinking directly in English. Remember, progress doesn't happen in one day. It happens step by step. Every time you listen to English, every time you practice a simple sentence in your mind, you are training your brain to make English more natural. It may feel slow in the beginning, but trust me, if you keep going, you will look back one day and realize how far you've come. Now, before you leave, I want to remind you once again, please click the like button if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss future lessons. When you like and subscribe, it not only helps this channel grow, but it also builds a strong community of learners who are all working towards the same goal: improving English step by step. And trust me, you don't want to miss the upcoming lessons, because each one will bring you closer to thinking and speaking more naturally in English. Learning English is a long journey, but it's also a very exciting one. There will be days when you feel motivated, and there will be days when you feel tired or discouraged. That's completely normal. What really matters is that you don't stop. Even if you practice just a few minutes every day, that small effort will add up to big results over time. So, keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and remember, you are not alone. I am here to guide you, and many other learners are walking the same path with you. Together, we can make English not just something we study, but something we live and enjoy every day. Thank you so much for listening and spending this time with me. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and keep learning. I'll see you in the next lesson, and until then, keep thinking in English and keep moving forward. You can do this.